Hey everybody, and welcome back to Moto with Ellery. And in this episode, we're going to do a little bit of kind of some potpourri. It's going to be a few different things from different questions that I've seen around or been asked over the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to kind of put them all together into a single episode with a few examples, mostly related to working with images inside of Moto. But then there's some other general kind of animation stuff in here as well that hopefully will be of use to a lot of you. So we're going to start here with the classic Moto stock content laptop, and what we're going to do is create a simple animation where the screen opens and an animation plays across the screen. So I've got a really simple animation of a bouncing ball that we're going to use, and we're just going to set this up so that we can easily open and close the screen and then move on. All right, so that being said, let's hop right over into the setup tab, and if we're looking at this piece here, you can see that the entire laptop is in one mesh layer, which means that if we want to animate this in any way other than using some deformers, we're going to need to dice it up. And really, for the simplicity of this animation and for the basic mechanical function of this, we don't really need to use any deformers. Really, the best way is going to be to just dice it up into a couple of different layers. In this case, we're going to also use a locator to help us control things. And then if we wanted, we could also set up a secondary item that would give us some slider control over opening and closing the laptop. So we're going to take a quick look at this. All right, so looking at the laptop, you can see that the entire back minus the screen here is one polygon chunk. Let's see, we've got that. So if I just press H, we'll hide that and we'll see we're left with just the screen here. And then we've got the screen, so let's also just kind of hide that for the moment. And then you can see we have a couple of little kind of just small pieces of detail that would be attached to the screen, but aren't there right now. And then we've got this little piece here that's also on the back. So I'm just hiding everything so we can see what we have to work with. And then there's a bit more here up at the top of the screen. There's all of this. If you use middle mouse button to click and drag around, you can get all that. So let's go ahead and hide all of that. Now with that stuff hidden, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this out and paste it in its own layer. Now alternately, you could go and copy and paste the stuff that is in the screen, but since we were kind of trying to sort out what was attached to the screen, I find it easier to take it and hide it until you get everything hidden, and then you can simply cut what you have here, press N to get a new layer, and paste. And then we can go back to our laptop 1 layer, and let's hide this one temporarily, and press U to unhide, and now we have everything here is just brought back, but it's all in its own layer now. So I'm going to rename this from laptop 01 to laptop screen, and then we're going to go and take this one here, this piece, and we're going to rename that laptop body. All right, so now we have our two separate pieces, but animating this is going to get a little bit dicey just because we have this point here that we want to rotate around, and we'd either need to do some stuff with snapping our pivots and things like that, but I find it to be a little bit easier to just set up a control locator, and then we can have that to use to control the opening and closing of the laptop. So let's turn on our wireframe visibility. Right now they're set to colored, and I want to set them to uniform so we can actually see the wires here. And what we'll want to do is center our locator right around this point here. And this is going to be the hinge where the laptop would actually rotate from. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this little bit right here. And then I'm going to move to the other side, and I'm going to select the same thing on the other side. Now, you don't have to do this, but I find this is just going to help us give a little bit of balance for when we actually get our locator in place here. And now it's going to actually center between the two. You could alternately just select one side, but I'm going to select both of them. So I'm going to go here to work plane and align it to selection. All right, we see we've got that in there. Now, the orientation of the work plane at this point is not important. All we're looking for is the position of the work plane so that it centers around those pieces. So now I'm just going to go ahead and click to add in a locator, and I'm going to make sure that I have the locator selected. And what I want to do is over here in the Setup tab, down here you can see that I've got to work plane position. If you click and hold, you also have to work plane rotation. But like I said, we're not really worrying about the work plane orientation right now. We just want to have that locator set along the line of where that hinge would be. So I'm just going to click to work plane position, and then I'm going to go ahead and reset the work plane. And now we've got this ready to go, and I'm going to rename this screen open. We'll hit OK. And then what I'm going to do is just take the laptop screen right now, and I'm just going to drag and drop it into screen open. And now all I'd have to do here in order to open and close the laptop is just rotate this. Now this might seem a tiny bit roundabout as a way to open and close the screen, but the idea here is that we want to set this up in such a way that we can actually get easy control over it, so that if we animate it and we need to change the animation slightly, we want to open it slower, we want to open it more quickly, we want it to open wider, something like that, we don't have to go back and do a lot of work. All we have to do is really adjust the position and the orientation of this one piece. So one other thing that I'm going to do here, and I'm going to switch to a side view for this, is I'm going to rotate this until the laptop is all the way closed. Now this is not 100% physically accurate, so there might be a little bit of overlapping, but that's all right. But now that I have this here, what I want to do is take my rotation and I want to zero it out. So over here in my properties, I'm going to go to 0 and rotation. And now this is going to be the 0 value for this piece here. So if I rotate this and, we open it all the way up, let's say we want to open it, like this, and then we want to reset it. Let's go back to our perspective view. To close, all we have to do is set this down to 0, and it's going to be closed. So that way we know we have a fixed point that we can return to, and that will make it much easier for us to do this animation. All right, so now that that's set up, let's go ahead and really quickly just set up some keyframes here. So I'm going to start it at 0, and then we're going to, let's say we actually leave it. Let's undo that. Turn off that. I'm going to actually start with my keyframe here at about 10. Now we could alternately have just gone back to the graph editor to change that, but this will be fine as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say I want about maybe 2 seconds for this to open. Okay, and now before I continue here, I should note that the animation that I have that I want to put on the screen is running at 30 frames a second. Now it's important to know this beforehand because we'll want to set up the scene to match the frame rate of our animation that we want to put on the screen, or vice versa. We want to match our animation to line up with this. Now in this case, I already have the animation done, so I don't want to have to go back and retime the animation. It's going to be much easier to change my frame rate at first, and then we can go back and fix it. So let's go here to settings, and I'm going to change my frame rate from 24 up to 30. And so now we've got our keyframe is a little bit off here, so let's go ahead and go to the graph editor. So I'm going to key in here frame 10, and now that's going to be right there at frame 10. That's going to lock in, and let's close that. And then we're going to go here, and I want 2 seconds, so I'm going to go up to about frame 70 here, and that's going to give us where I want it to be open. So we'll just open it up nice like that. Okay, and now we've got our animation. Okay, so now we could set up our camera however we want. We could make the camera kind of pan by as it opens up, whatever the case may be. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it relatively simple like this, because all I want is for the screen to open up and then for the animation to play once the screen opens up. All right, so let's go now and actually put on our screen here. So we're going to go to our shader tree, and here let's actually hop over to the render tab so we can see this a little bit better. Let's go ahead and start our preview. There we go. And here inside of the laptop, let's just click here so I get the screen material. And you can see right now it has this default screen with Moto interface and the old man on there. We don't want that now. We want to replace it with something that's animated. So what I'm going to do, I have a couple ways I could do this. I could just import a new one and replace it. I could go in here and I could replace it here. What I want to do is I want to keep the original. So what I'm going to do is just import the image on top of it for right now. So let's go add layer, image, and we want to make sure that we have an image sequence. So this is going to be really crucial, is if you have an animation that you want to bring into Moto as a texture, either on a screen or on whatever you'd want to put an animated texture on, you have to set up an image sequence. So I did mine in After Effects. All I did is I took my animation and I rendered it out as a PNG sequence, so that's pretty easy. There are some free tools that can help you translate a movie file into an image sequence. If you need links to those, let me know. I can add them into the video description if anybody has difficulty finding them. So let's go ahead and click on Load Sequence here, and I want to go into here, episode 13. Here's our ball sequence, and I'm just going to click on frame 0 and then click Open. All right, and now we've got something here, and it's not lining up properly though. So if let's go ahead and hide our our screen, and we can see what it is right now it's set to diffuse color, and I want to change that to luminous color. Put this to luminous color, and now we've got something on here, but it's going to be a little bit off, and the reason is this animation is one that I just took that I already had that was set at 1080p, so it's set by 16 by 9 widescreen, and this screen is not a 16 by 9 screen, it's a 4 by 3 aspect ratio. So a couple ways I could deal with that. What I'm going to do here, just to make this a little easier, is I'm going to go over to my UV edit. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to take the screen and I'm going to squash it just a little bit. So here, let's zoom in on the screen here. And what will happen is if I select that screen polygon and I use the scale tool, if I scale this in, you'll see that it actually scales the ball out. So if we go to a frame here, somewhere that has the ball actually on screen, let's go to maybe... Oops, right there works. Then we'll just have to get to a good angle where we can see it. You can see now that the ball is a little less stretched. So again, let's go back to UV layout here. And we can, again, just go back to editing this. Now, let's go ahead and just scale this. And as I scale this more, you can see that it's going to stretch the ball back out to a more normal aspect. Now this is just cheating it, but it's important to know that if you adjust your size and overall kind of orientation and scale and squash and stretch of your actual UV, it's going to affect directly how your images show up here. So if I wanted to get this like that, I can easily make that adjustment just by scaling the UV. Now conversely here, if I were to scale this way, you can see it's going to stretch the ball back out, but that's not what I want. I want the ball to take up more horizontal space. So in order for it to take up more horizontal space, I have to scale the UV to take up less horizontal space. So it's kind of the inverse is what happens here. All right, so I think that works. And now what I'm going to do is if I go over here to our actual ball bounce, let's go to here in the options, we can see we have image sequence, and first frame is 0, last frame is 89, so it's an 89 frame sequence. And right now it's starting on frame 0. Really, I don't want it to start until the laptop opens, so I'm going to set the start frame to, let's go to frame 70, which is right when the laptop screen hits open. But the ball is off screen, so it's going to take it a couple frames to come on anyway, so I'm going to set it right there, so right at 70. Okay, so now if we hop over to setup and we scrub the timeline here, we'll see the laptop screen opens, and then once the screen opens, our animation will play back on screen. And yeah, it looks like the ball just barely gets off screen before the end of the sequence, and there we go. So now this is all set up. So we, however we want to set up lighting or cameras or whatever is a completely different topic, but this would give you the basic idea of how to set up an animated screen for this laptop. Not only the screen itself animating as far as its physical hinges, but then how to animate something on the screen. And you could use anything you want. You could use screen caps, you could use movie recordings or whatever and put them on there. I'm just using this one because it's pretty simple and easy to read. And there you go. So that's that part done. All right, so continuing on here with looking at using images and UVs, I also wanted to take another quick example here. So let's go ahead and save this one. All right, and then we're going to hop over here. Let's go to the item tab. I'm going to close this up, and I've got another one here with what is going to end up being kind of a scoreboard. So the idea here is that this would be kind of like something you'd see in a basketball arena or at a football stadium or baseball, something like that. It's going to either have something like the score on it, or what I'm looking for a little bit more here is going to be, something that has, video running on it. But I'm not looking for that super crisp, high definition video. I'm looking for the little bit older style where this is done with a big array of bulbs, and I want to see each bulb carry its own color to give us a finished look to the image. And this can also be applied to a lot of different things. I'm probably going to do a follow-up episode where we use something like this in order to do some visual effects sequences. But for now, we're just going to look at it in the case of the scoreboard. All right, so what I'm going to start here by doing is going over and getting an image, and I've got this image here. It's just a cropped part of just an image of a fantasy building. I don't know I didn't have a reference to the artist, so if anybody happens to know who this is, let me know and I can post credits, but I'm just going to use it here for demonstration because I thought it was a nice looking image. And so we're going to take this and we're going to put it in here. I've got this set up so I've got the frame and the backing, and now what I need to do is very quickly here in the screen, I'm going to go ahead and just add in a material that I'll call screen. And we'll click OK. It's set to blue, but that's all right because we're going to override that. And now I'm going to go back over here and grab this image and drag and drop it onto there. And right now it's just going to fill the whole screen, but it's going to be oriented wrong. So this is where we're going to start really looking at how the UVs are going to be working a bit more on this. So we're going to start just by moving over here. And what we can see is that the bottom edge here, so if we lasso select this, the bottom edge of the image is appearing on that left-hand side of the actual screen. So what we want to do is we want to orient the UVs such that they are aligned here. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have our screen selected, and then let's go to our UV maps, make sure we have our texture. There it is. And so here is the side of the screen. So this is going to be the left side, and right now it's appearing along the bottom. So what we want to do is rotate the entire thing here 90 degrees that way, and that's going to work, except right now you can see this is really stretched out, and that's because the actual image is a square image, and what we're looking at here is a wider screen aspect ratio. So we're going to do the same thing that we had done before, and what that's going to be is to just do some scaling on this in order to get this to fit better. So right now we can see it's stretched out too far horizontally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it in vertically since I don't have any more horizontal space. And what I'm looking for, and this is actually pretty easy to tell, is I'm just looking for, in this case, for the squares here to actually be squares. So the individual polygons should look like squares. All right, and then what I could do also is I could just scale the entire thing down just a little bit. Okay, and now we have that fitting into screen. Okay, so now what I'm looking for though is I want the look of this to be like individual lights. Now I could probably do this at a lot higher resolution, but in this case I'm not going to. I just want to make it relatively simple as far as the setup goes. But just know, if you want a higher resolution version of this, all you'd have to do is add more polygons here, and it's going to work exactly the same. But you'd want to add those polygons in and decide your essentially your resolution of this beforehand, because once you set it up, it's going to be a little bit of a pain to get it to add more detail to. So right now we're going to be fine with the amount of resolution that we have. And here, actually, let's do this though. Let's go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this screen and hide one so that I can show you, how you would go ahead and set that up. So what I need now is I need to take all of the individual polygons here, and they need to be broken up so that each individual one, I'm just going to use like little spheres. I'm not going to get super specific with, how these are modeled to look like individual bulbs on this board. I'm not going to worry about that, but you could do it relatively simply. All I'm going to do though is I'm going to take these and I'm going to split them up and then add some depth to them and subdivide them so we get little balls out of them. All right, so to do that, all that we need to do is start by getting all of these individual polygons separated. So an easy way to do that is just to use the bevel tool and turn off group polygons and then just click in your viewport. All right, now if you wanted a little bit of offset, you could do that here if you want them to be a little bit further apart. I want to be pretty close together, and I know that the subdivision surfaces are already going to kind of add a little bit of space, so I don't want to make them any different right now. So now all I have to do is, now that I've done that, I turned on the bevel tool, turned off group polygons, and click. Now I just press Q, and now what I have selected is all of those original polygons, but now all of them have a little border of polygons around them. So if I invert my selection with the open bracket key right next to the P key, it's going to select all of those polygons, and then I can just cut those out. And now it looks almost the same, but if I double click on any individual polygon, you'll see that they're no longer attached, so they're all separated. All right, so now what we'll need to do is we want to set up the UV in such a way that each polygon is not getting, if we look right here, if I zoom in on this one polygon, each polygon's getting, quite a few pixels attached to it. But really what I want is I just want one color for each polygon. And a nice way to do that is to just scale all of these right in their own local space, so they only take up a tiny bit of UV space, and then that way they'll each just get whatever pixel they're on. So let's go ahead and set our action center to local, and then I'm going to hit the scale tool, and it's going to start off down here, and that's fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale these guys way, way down. Now I'm going to leave them with a little tiny bit of space here, just so that I have them later should I need them. But I think I'm going to go down to about, I don't know, 1.5 or 2%. Let's go for 2%. So now you can see that the UV just looks like a bunch of vertices once we zoom out. But if we look at the actual screen here, now we're getting a kind of a cool pixelized version of what we were looking at. Okay, so in order to just make sure that this is going to work really well too here, I'm also going to click over to shading. I'm going to select the background image. And on the image, or on the texture layers rather, I'm going to turn off anti-aliasing, and that's going to avoid any little bits of bleed smoothing between the pixels, and that way we're sure we get just a single color on here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create our little spheres just by, let's hop over to the model tab, and all I'm going to do is use the thicken tool. So let's go thicken, click, and we're just going to drag these back, about that far, something like that, and press Shift Tab. And there we go. Now we've got all of our little mini kind of light bulbs. So I think they're a little on the shallow side. So let's set our action center back to auto. And I'm just going to scale these out just a little bit more, so they're a little bit longer. And there you have it. So now we've got a pretty cool looking little light board. Like I said, this one's pretty low resolution, but if you want to do that in a higher resolution, here I had gone and saved another duplicate here. So what I'm going to do here is press Shift D. To just subdivide everything here. So now I've got twice as many pixels essentially, both vertically and horizontally. So let's go over to layout. Excuse me, let's go over to UV layout just so we make sure we can see everything here. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So double click, bevel, click, drop the tool, invert the selection, cut those out. Oh, do make sure you have group polygons turned off. I know it was turned off because I had already done that once. And now we'll do the same thing here. We'll go over into our UV map. We'll set our action center back to local, and we'll turn on the scale tool, and we'll give this a second because this has more to deal with now. And then basically what we'll do is we'll just scale everything back down to 2%. There we go. So let's just put in 2. And we'll give that a second. It seems to want to hang a little bit, but there we go. Okay, so now we can drop that, and now we're set, and you can see we have the same thing, but in a higher resolution. So now another cool thing that you can do with this, and let me know in the comments in the video, or in the video here, if you would like to see another video on actually kind of controlling pan and zoom and things like that within this, because really to get your initial setup, it's fairly simple. If I want to scale this, all I would have to do is use the scale tool here. And remember that anything you do here is going to be inverted with how it looks on the actual board. So if I scale this down, it's going to be like zooming in. If I move it around, it's going to move the opposite direction that I move it here. But basically all we'd have to do then is let's set our action center back to auto. So if I want to zoom in, we just scale this down and see we zoom in. And then if we want to pan around, we can do that just simply by moving around a little bit. And then we can set this back up. And we can move that around. So let me know if you'd like to see a video on how to actually set this up with some animatable controls so that you can actually make this happen over animation, because you can't directly animate UV position, but there are some other things that you can do to make it so that you can animate how your UVs are applying to your image. So let me know in the video description if you'd like to see a video about that. So that does it for this one. I hope this can be of use to some of you who might be needing to work with images or some simple animation in your projects. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. If you like this video or the other ones like it, you can check out my Patreon account, patreon.com/Ellery. Or if you would like to get the content to this video or any of the other ones, you can pick up individual episodes on Gumroad, and that's gumroad.com/Ellery. Hope this was helpful. go make something cool, and I'll see you in the next episode.